admit people as and when they come in.
Great, thank you, Dan. Wonderful, lovely to see everybody again. It's really nice. It feels quite nostalgic, actually, seeing Bristol Diocese in all its glory. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lucy from Messy Church at BRF, and it's been a huge privilege. It sounds really trite to say it. It sounds so insincere, and yet it really has been this massive privilege to work with Claire and Naomi and Dan and the other diocesan leads in Durham and in Hereford for this deepening discipleship project that will be released. It will be released. It was meant to be the 12th of April. It's going to be the 5th of May for reasons out of our control. But next week, it will all go beautifully, beautifully public. And so you're getting a sneak preview this morning. We were just talking beforehand about we don't think anybody on this screen is going to rush off to the BBC and the Daily Mail and get it splattered all over the headlines of the papers. Anyway, it's lovely to have the joy of being with you and just sharing the actual report that's been created. So Claire's going to take us through that later on with the help of some people on this call who were, of course, involved in it. And we'll be hearing not just from Claire, who headed up the research, but also from the actual researchers on the ground, which is wonderful. So Dan asked me just to set the scene a little bit by talking about a Messy Church over the last, over a year now, isn't it? What's been going on over the pandemic. And I thought it might be quite useful just to highlight a few of the resources available to people as a result of the changes. So, back about this time last year, we were, or just before, we were all systems go for both Messy Church in general, but also for deepening discipleship. And those of you involved were all really steaming ahead with the research and really starting to get into the reflective listening and so on. And then suddenly it was all taken away from us, wasn't it? Anybody involved in a Messy Church just had to stop. All the things that made Messy Church, or that make Messy Church so wonderful, were taken away from us. That, the togetherness, the jostling up against each other, the being able to sit with older people. All our older people were behind closed doors. All our younger people, we couldn't be with them. Eating together, even having a cup of coffee after church. All of this was taken away. And the whole, the sort of informal learning that you do at Messy Church of just kind of how to live with other people, like sharing things, sharing a pair of scissors, sharing the sellotape, all of that was just, it was like a tablecloth being whipped away by an evil magician. It was just taken away overnight. And I think with the Deepening Discipleship project, we were all reeling from that hugely, because everybody had been so invested, and then suddenly we didn't know what we were doing. Claire will talk later about that, but in the Messy Church network overall, it was absolutely fascinating for me, because if I'm honest, I really expected Messy Church to stop, like to die. If I'm really honest, I thought, how can a movement like ours survive this when we can't meet together and be the church that we know we are, with those lovely 5 values of being all age and hospitality, creativity. We can't do any of this. Surely it means it's the end and we're in the death throes. And to my delight and surprise and embarrassment, because I was so wrong, there was something about the movement as a whole and people's commitment to Jesus expressed in their messy church ministry. There was and is a passion and a determination to carry on and to serve the families God's put in our communities, God's given us contact with, even though it felt impossible. And that passion and that drive and that commitment just lit up what has been a very hard year. It also lit up and shone through the decision to carry on with the deepening discipleship research. As I say, Claire will talk about that later, but it was the determination of the people on the ground to keep going with this, to persist, persevere. And it's been a real lesson for me in God is behind this. This is not about, it's not about me, it's not about BRF, it's not about really about any one individual. There is the Holy Spirit of God bubbling up like living water in this movement and carrying us along, perhaps like living water, flowing, carrying individuals when we need carrying, inspiring us, invigorating us, giving us to drink when we're thirsty. That is just so exciting, because it's just a lot better when it's God and not us, isn't it? Let me get a bit down off my lofty high horse and see if I can just share this with you. Here we have, I think. Oh, here we go. These are just a few resources that came up during lockdown. What we decided to do was, oh, look, oh, it's on a slidey one. No. This is going to be very funny. I'll talk about it and it can slide past. The Facebook Lives were great. They were such an important thing for us during lockdown. And the idea was that we would, hang on, let me get to that one, that we needed to connect. We needed to connect with each other around the world and support each other. And so we put in just a time every Wednesday to touch base with each other and encourage each other. And here, it was such a beacon of hope to hear from the messy churches in New Zealand, for example, that they were meeting again in summer last year, and to know that there is hope for us all. So the Facebook Lives have gone on and are being used in different ways. So for example, next Wednesday at 9 in the morning and 8 in the evening, that's to cover the international time zones, I can share the findings of deepening discipleship and follow on from what Claire was saying about it the other week. So we can use it to share with a lot of people informally, very quickly. But it's a time of connection and making friends, very, very responsive and participative. It's lovely. And then we decided to take all our training online. So I don't know if any of you have spotted, but there are messy masterclasses happening. And instead of having to wait until Dan can organise training in your diocese just up the road from you, and you have to arrange babysitting and travel and transport and so on, it's beamed straight into your home. So these training sessions of 90 minutes online have been very popular. We've got Reimagining Your Messy Church for a Changing Context, which is a little bit about what we're talking about this morning, perhaps in more depth. Messy Church Discipleship, again, using the findings from deepening discipleship within that and talking further. And for those who are just thinking about starting your messy church. And even more informally, we just put in some messy meetups online as well, just a time to bring your coffee and chat with people. We've got the Mestival coming up, which is in May, and that's going to be exciting. The morning is a time for doing some very sort of bite-sized training, just 3 half-hour workshops to drop in and say, oh, that's interesting. I've always wanted to hear about messy vintage. I've always wanted to know a little bit more about Messy Church Does Science. I've been thinking about taking my messy church outdoors. You can just go along for half an hour to 3 of the workshops on that morning. And in the afternoon, we're putting on the biggest messy church ever. And that'll be just on YouTube for 15 minutes and gathering messy churches from all over the place to see Martin Payne doing a lovely celebration with story, song and prayer. And the idea is that we try to break all the records for how big a messy church we can do, for the number of people watching, we shall see. Again, this came out of the idea that we want to connect. We help each other out by connecting. We increase our sustainability. That sounds really harsh and formal, but we have a better chance of being church when we do it together and when we get to know each other, when we hang out with each other. So while we can't be face to face in person, we can be together online, and perhaps the model will help us when we can actually be together face to face, maybe in a different year. And the other thing that we did was to reorganize our support in general. We realized that with the advent of online, we didn't need to have regional coordinators to look after Messy Church in quite the same way. We could have different aspects of support helping in different ways. So if you look on the website, just under find support, you'll find all these different teams that you can tap into or maybe even join, because on this screen there is a whole lot of experience. And we're very, very open to new people coming onto these teams to look after and support and resource other messy churches. So we've got all these different teams. For example, if you're thinking of getting started with a messy church, you might go for the green one, the getting going team, who can just pick up the phone to you and chat you through starting a messy church. Or probably for a lot of people on this screen who've been doing messy church for some time, for example, after today and your breakout rooms and Claire talking, you might feel, oh, we've got a real opportunity here. We want to talk about it with someone who can kind of coach us through it. So the purple, the alongsiders team there, they're available. They've been trained in missional coaching. So they're available to just spend some time with you online or on the phone and just help ask the right questions so that you can go further in your planning and thinking. It's all free. These are all volunteers. They're wonderful people. And we love people to make more use of them. So there we go. A whole lot else has happened as well, but those are just a few of the highlights. Let me just check. You'll have come across the resources we've been putting out for Messy Church at home or in a bag. Those are all available on the website as well. So if you haven't come across those, they might just save you a few minutes of thinking time. So do make the most of those. Great. I'm going to you are the first people in the world to see this, which probably means that the technology will go horribly wrong and you won't be able to see it. But as part of the introduction to deepening discipleship, a voyage of discovery, as we've called the research report, there's a little animation that we've made. It's just 2 minutes and it's lovely. And Dan wanted to see it at the start and we wouldn't let him see it. So here it is for Dan and for everybody. I hope it works. Enjoy. It introduces the whole of deepening discipleship. So let's see if this works. Okay, share sound. Where did this go? Share. Can you let me know if you can't hear it once it starts? That would be great.
How do you make disciples in Messy Church? We took a team of researchers, the National Messy Church team, 24 local Messy churches, and set off together in 2019 with generous amounts of prayer, guided conversation, reflective practice, laughter, hard work, and cake. Then journeyed together through a global pandemic. The Messy Churches piloted 6 different approaches to making disciples. 3 approaches involved working with the families. 3 involved working with the team. New all-age materials were developed and new insights came from each approach. We were talking about God and it made it feel as if God was listening to us. Rather than craft with a bit of Jesus, it's become more about Jesus with a bit of craft. I've learnt that it's much harder to talk about the Bible than I thought it would be, but it was really cool tonight. What are some of the headlines? If you want to make disciples in Messy Church, it's about some very simple decisions. Decide to be a community of reflective practice. Make space for reflection in every aspect of Messy Church. Decide to value quality, not just quantity. Value the significance of the small and the single. Decide to journey together. We found there's something profound and effective about togetherness. More than anything, decide to be disciples and to make disciples. Because we're church. That simple act of deciding to be on a lifelong journey with others to follow Jesus is the one action that will lead to greater depth. Oh, and cake. Eat lots of cake.
So exciting, so exciting. Hope you like it. It'll be available on the website with all the other resources. So yeah, we're very proud. Claire, over to you, the bit we've all been waiting for.
Well, I don't know about that. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from Sheffield. It's lovely to be with you all. And I thought I'd start by telling you something about the kind of research this was, the way we did it. I want to touch on this because it's important you all know how cutting edge this research is. This type of research, participatory action research, the terms there on the screen, it's relatively new to the Church of England, although it's well established in other fields and disciplines. But action research sets in motion or actions a change and then monitors how that thing develops with a chance to make further changes as you go. So rather than, as you would find in more traditional research, knowledge is gathered first that then leads to proposed changes, usually phrased as recommendations. Action research flips that. And what you do first is you do the change, which then generates knowledge. And it's cutting edge because some of you, as Messy Church leaders, became the frontline researchers. You are the experts. You know your messy churches like no one else. So who better than to do the frontline research? All of which ensured that the research would be relevant, practical, and reports wouldn't be sitting on shelves gathering dust in months and years to come. And it's also an ongoing process. There's a cyclical nature to this kind of research. We picked up from Playfully Serious, which was some research we did a few years ago. We've gone through the process of this research, but that's not the end. It carries on. And at various points in this session, we'll be inviting you to think through, well, if you wanted to start this process, this research process in your messy church, how might you start? When we did the research, this is how we got started. We asked messy churches that were willing to engage in this research, come on this journey with us, to choose which approach of the 6 they wanted to work with. And here in Bristol, of course, the 2 that we piloted were Messy Basics and Young Leaders. And the amazing thing about this research is that leaders had to do it with teams and with families. It's involved conversations around, well, which approach is right for our messy church and which is right for right now. How will we choose to develop this approach in our messy church? And are we up for this at its most basic? And later down the road, later on in the process, we asked you to talk with your teams, talk with your families and gather feedback. So if all of this sounds a bit daunting, this is what I would want to say. Doing it with your teams and families, that's where the real treasure lies. We'd planned to do it for a year, but of course COVID happened. And so we were on this journey for 18 months. And we also asked you right at the start to complete a baseline survey online to gather just a few numbers and a few kind of impressions of where your messy church were up to, just to kind of take a snapshot before the research. I can say more about where we went with that in the questions if you want. But just in case you're wondering, well, what are the messy basics and the young leaders' approaches? The messy basics was the one for families. And it introduced the basics of the Christian faith. You all did it slightly differently, but if I could sort of summarize, it was sort of 6 to 10 sessions, with each session looking at a basic of the Christian faith, working with material that BRF had already written. So for example, a session on who is God, who is Jesus, giving space for those faith conversations with all ages together. And some of you found a smaller group worked well at a different time and a different space to the existing messy church gathering. However, some of you chose to work with material actually in your main messy church gathering as well. And then young leaders, this was the approach for teams, discipling your under 18s as leaders, part of your leadership team, core leaders working alongside your young people to plan and deliver gatherings. So let me stop at this point and hand over to Lucy and Julie to hear what it was like to start this research in practice.
Great, thank you. Julie, there you are, wonderful. I don't know if everyone can see you. I'm going to spotlight you for everyone, no pressure. Oh, Julie, can you take us back to the very start of the project for you? And can you just tell us briefly, what was it like choosing what to do?
Okay, it was fairly straightforward for me to choose what to do. I was already doing a lot of reflecting on how to disciple families and how to develop their faith, and that was something that we were focusing on as a Messy Church. And also I'd started doing some take-home leaflets, and so that people could sort of read about why we'd done particular activities, and some questions for them to discuss at home. And I thought I might be able to develop this during this project, but actually it was a slightly different slant, which was okay, which was interesting. And we didn't really have the young leaders age group within our Messy Church anyway. So the actual decision to do the Messy Basics was straightforward for us. It was sort of an obvious choice.
Great, great. And just tell us, what was it like getting started? How, you know, communicating with your team, with the families, making the decisions about where and who? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, it was quite tricky actually. I started doing this at the same time as I started working as a children and family worker. And so it was quite on the hoof. So it all started in September. My job started in September. This project was beginning in sort of October time. So yeah, there was a lot on all at one time. And there were times when I thought, have I, bitten off more than I can chew, sort of thing. And on reflection, I think if I was to go back and redo it, I obviously couldn't because it was a project timing, but if I was doing it now, and I had my own time scale, I would probably take more time talking about it with our team, reflecting on the Messy Church values and seeing, what are the things we needed to focus on, looking at the importance of developing the faith of the families, because people tend to come along because it seems fun and it's lots of lovely activities to do, and actually we've got an audience there and we want to tell them something a lot that's really important to us, and we don't want to miss out on that opportunity. So I think the discipling is really important. So probably like reflecting on that with the team. I did talk about it with the Sunday congregation. I did talk about it at Messy Church, but it was like a one-off talk. And I think what would be really valuable would be to like maybe do a succession of talking about why this is important, and maybe talking at Messy Church about how following Jesus is a journey. So that they could see, and then sort of leading into, and we're going to be doing this. We set it up as a separate group, the Messy Basics, and that worked well. And I would do it that way again rather than within the Messy Church. So sort of saying, and we're going to start this new group, and you can come along and join in and have those discussions. So yeah, it was a lot of things to decide very quickly. The time and the place was another thing we spent a lot of time thinking about, because families are already busy and it's always hard to know when the right time is. We chose to do it in a local coffee shop, so and we wanted to do it outside of coffee shop hours, and we already have links as a church with the coffee shop, so we did it there on a Sunday afternoon when the public weren't there. And that was good because it was a very relaxed, friendly atmosphere, and we had plenty of cake and tea and coffee on hand. So yeah, that was good. So that sort of really determined the time in the week. It sort of narrowed it a bit.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Is there just quickly, is there any one thing you would want to say to anyone thinking about doing the Messy Basics course themselves?
One thing I did do is when I did speak and say to all the Messy Church people as a whole, this is what we're doing, but I found the most valuable thing was focusing on people that I thought were ready for it, and sort of targeting them and talking to them one-to-one about it. And the people that came were all people I'd spoken to individually. So one lady and a daughter came who I'd not targeted. They were quite new to Messy Church, but somebody who I'd spoken to had gone and spoken to her. So it had passed on that way. So yeah, I think perhaps nurture particular families who you think are ready for it.
Wonderful. Julie, thank you so much. That reminder that it's all about relationships and getting to know people. That's so important. Thank you so much. And thank you for pioneering the approach as well. Brilliant. Back to Claire.
Great. Well, as we've been saying, woven into the research process was the value or discipline of reflecting. And reflective practice is a term you sometimes hear in church circles, and it's just a fancy way of saying we make sure we stop at regular intervals and talk together about what we're doing, why we're doing it, whether it's having the effect we hope it is, and if it isn't, well, why not? What could we do differently? Reflective practice is probably easier to do about practical things. You know, did we have enough chairs? Did we have enough people on welcome? Were there enough sausages to go around? And what this research helped us do was to gear our reflections, our reflective conversations, more to discipleship and people's faith journey. And of course, discipleship is a baffling and complex term to us, let alone our families. If you need a resource to help you begin to kind of crack open this word, to work out what on earth it means in practice, we do have this resource, this Islands activity resource that you can do with your teams and your families. It helps some, not all, but it helps some of the Messy churches in the research just get started. But once we'd got started, we asked leaders to complete these feedback forms. So this image will look very familiar to some of you. It's not the only way to reflect, but it was the way that we chose to help you reflect in this project as a team. What were you seeing and hearing at meetings and at gatherings? Just two sides of A4, noting numbers, attendance numbers, how you felt something went, things you observed, key conversations you had, key things people said, and actually writing down exactly what they said. And the regularity of doing this, it may sound like a whole load more work. I think folks would say kind of once you get into the routine of it, it isn't more work. And actually what it's about is it's changing the culture of your Messy Church, of your team, of your leadership style to something that's normal and life-giving. But let's see how you found it. And let me hand over to Lucy and Mary and Ed to share your experience of doing this reflection in practice.
I'm emailed poor Mary and Ed only yesterday to ask them about this. So I'm just trying to change my view here.
We're unmuted now. That's okay.
There we go.
Yes.
I think we're unmuted.
Yes.
There we go. Excellent. And we'll spotlight you for everyone. There we go. Marvellous. So Mary and Ed from West Swindon, how lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you and your background.
Thank you. Just thinking about the reflecting that you did during the Deepening Discipleship project. Can you just give us your take on it? How did you find the whole getting into the practice of reflecting as a team?
Yeah, of course, it's quite a long time ago now when we finally set off with it all, and I think we spent a bit of time talking about how we were going to complete these forms before we actually started the Messy Discipleship course. And I'm quite a naturally reflective person, so I could have been the person who sat there every meeting quite happily making notes of what everybody said and what I observed. But we decided if we were going to do it well, everybody would take a turn in doing it, or lots of different people would take a turn in the reflection. Because that gives you a wider picture of what's actually going on, so it's not just through the lens of one person, and B, the hope was, because we'd encouraged one or two of our older young people to be involved, that we would encourage them to do it as a learning exercise for them, really, because that whole thing about looking at something and reflecting about it is something not just for Messy Church, but it's about whatever you do in life in general, really. And we thought, yeah, that would be a good way of encouraging them to develop those kind of skills. But then, of course, COVID hit, and I think Claire will bear us out, we probably only sent in about 3 or 4 reflective forms, because we then had to stop and rethink and do everything. But certainly, I think for Messy Church generally, it might be quite good occasionally just to have somebody there who's doing this kind of exercise, because it helps you to see the broader picture of what's going on, really. Do you want anything to add to that? Are you going to?
Yeah, I think the change of setting that we had to arrange was definitely quite disruptive for this activity in particular, because in any case, I think we'd found it was quite difficult for just one person to go around and gather these reflective comments. You could have done with 2 or 3 maybe, because every little group was, whatever they were working on really, was saying things and doing things, and there were things to observe. And once you take it out of an indoors context, you're trying to do Messy Church either on Zoom or in some cases, our last one was outside in a churchyard when the hail came down for a short while just after Easter. This activity was quite difficult to keep going. But having said that, I think, like Mary, some of my sort of background, professional background, is used to making observations about what people do and what people said, and doing it in an evaluative way, really. So we did our best, but I think, as Mary said, we're conscious that it was a bit hit and miss in some parts of the programme, because we had to deliver these sessions in all sorts of different ways. But I think one of the good news items, really, our last session, which was only a couple of Sundays ago, not on this deepening discipleship program, but our general session, Messy Church session, we had 25 people there out in the outdoors churchyard in the hail, and a lot of people were expressing their real joy and pleasure that we were able to meet together again, and that was reassuring, I think, and reaffirming for the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the main questions and that has come out is simply inviting team members to spot where they see God at work in the Messy Church. Regardless of forms and islands and projects and research, the simple question of, where did we see God at work today? This is a really hard question to throw at you publicly and on the spot, but could you, where do you see God at work? Where did you see God at work in the whole deepening discipleship process for you?
I think one thing that sticks out for me is one particular family that have been coming to Messy Church for quite some time, with mother and 2 children. And father had always been a bit remote and distant from Messy Church. But suddenly, and I don't think it was anything that we did that prompted it, but dad started coming as well with the others during these sessions. So it was quite an undertaking, and he must have known what he was coming into. But to come in and to start exploring some of these topics in deepening discipleship, that was, for me, that was a significant moment when you said, God's doing something here.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, Ed and Mary. That's wonderful to hear your insights, and thank you and the team, because you're such a close-knit team. Thank you for all you poured into this project, and it's lovely to hear your side of things. Oh, wonderful. Some of you might be thinking, kind of, whoa, we'd love to follow this up. We'd love to do something about it, from what Julie was saying earlier, from what Ed and Mary have said. And this is the sort of situation where you might want to touch base with the Purple team, with the Alongside Us team who are doing the coaching. And you can get in touch with them and just say, we want to be more reflective. Help us ask the right questions to get to that place. So yeah, thank you for the trailblazing that you've done there. Wonderful. Back over to Claire.
Great. So on to the final part of the research process. The reason we asked all the leaders to fill in these reflection forms were for our sense-making sessions, where we invited you all to come and make sense of what you'd been noting down, what you'd been observing. We held 2 gatherings, one in January at the diocesan offices, and then the second at the end of the research on Zoom last autumn. It feels like ages ago. And during these sense-making sessions, what we asked you to do was swap your reflections. We asked you as leaders to look at another Messy Church's reflections while they looked at yours, and to prayerfully read, trusting in the power of the Holy Spirit at work in our hearts to draw attention to what was key. The technical term for this process is discerning the data. And it was a joint process of local leaders as the inside researchers, reflecting on, well, where is God at work in what we've been observing, alongside our little team of outside researchers, Lucy, Naomi and myself, also asking the very same question and sort of together discerning. And it's always a scary thing when you're on your own working on research, trying to discern what you believe God may be saying to you through something, and it's so much better, so much more stable to do with that with as many people as possible, local leaders, us coming in from outside, discerning together through the power of the Holy Spirit, where is God at work? And for those of you who are wondering, gosh, where does this methodology come from? We borrowed these aspects from something called theological action research. Claire Watkin and Helen Cameron down in Roehampton and Oxford, they've written about all they've learned about theological action research. I can say more about that if you'd like in questions. So where was God at work? What did we learn in these 2 approaches we piloted? Well, sadly, there's not time to tell you all that we discovered, but for that, of course, you can download our findings PDF next Wednesday when we launch the research. It's called A Voyage of Discovery, and that will contain all the wisdom that we captured, all of where God was at work that we discerned, in hopefully an easy to read format for you. With Messy Basics, just to give you a few headlines, I think we've said it already, I think Julie, you said it, we felt that actually God was already at work in some of the lives of the families, and that what we needed to do was to be ready to take them on that next step. So don't start too soon. Don't start until you think families are ready. And even though intergenerational learning and engaging can be challenging, God seemed to be at work in the unexpected or the off-the-cuff comments and questions. There was a richness in the different perspectives and the different contributions from the young and old. And God seemed to be at work just as much as in the informal time as he was in the formal, prepared content. So the advice was, don't fill up your session with too much formal content. Leave time for families to talk together and get to know one another. And as one of you, you said, I had conversations with adults I never had with those adults in any other contexts. And then just a few headlines about young leaders. God seemed to be at work in the relationship between the adults and the young people, learning from one another. And as such, this approach, it needs leaders who are open to learning from their young people, not just vice versa. And perhaps as one might expect, God was at work in the hearts of the teenagers as they taught others that helped them articulate their own faith. And then the feedback and the encouragement they gave one another. It's a beautiful skill, and we thought reflected a sense of maturity that you don't often, well, no, you don't always find in groups of adults, that ability to encourage one another on team and give good, helpful, constructive feedback. And of course, the sense that they were developing over the course of the kind of the research period. And as one leader expressed it, by the end, all 5 of our young leaders would happily pray out loud at a meeting. So just a snapshot there, just a few bits of the wisdom that we gathered. Let me hand over to Lucy and Anita. I believe you're happy to speak to us this morning about your experience of the sense making sense of what you'd been noting in your reflections and looking at someone else's messy church reflections. How was that in practice?
Oh. Sorry, Anita, just throw you onto the screen randomly there. Oh, lovely to see you again. And of course, Anita and Helen in Downend were working, as you have done for many, many years, with your young people, but focusing for this project on your young leaders team. And there is a wonderful photo of the teenagers, isn't there, standing in the church, all masked up in black in their messy church kind of t-shirts, just looking like an army of ninjas ready to go into battle. It's an excellent photo. Anita, can you just tell us, how was the sense-making process for you? How did that go for you? What was it like, the actual sense-making process?
It was really helpful, actually, because we were able to work with Alison and Paul, who I think are here today. Hi, Alison and Paul, and swap, our learning sheets with them and all the notes that we'd taken. And we learned so much from seeing how they did things. Some things we then discussed and said, oh, should we be doing that? And sometimes we thought, yes, we should do that. And at other times we thought, no, actually that wouldn't work for us, but it helped us to sort of discuss those things. And I think it helped us to take risks that we wouldn't have taken if we'd had no one else doing it and seeing that it worked for them, that helped us to think, oh yeah, well, we can do it if they can do it. Well, that goes for the whole idea of having our young people actually run Messy Church, which is what we did. I think if we hadn't been able to hear from Alison and Paul's church and see how they were doing it, I'm not sure we would have had the courage to even start doing it. So I think those sense-making things, they helped us to reflect a lot more on what we were doing and evaluate what we were doing, but also to learn from them. And of course, we got feedback from them and got encouragement, things that they've noticed about us that we wouldn't have noticed about ourselves. So yeah, it was a really positive thing.
Wonderful. And in the project as a whole, again, the question of where did you see God at work? If there was, obviously, I'm sure in a lot of ways, but if there was one moment or one particular situation, could you put your finger on where you think you saw God at work?
Yeah, I think I think one of the most striking things was the way that the families and particularly the children at Messy Church were so much more engaged with any teaching and learning that we did together, any sort of worship time, than they were when we did it, because the young people were leading. So when the young people did a little talk or did the puppets or said a prayer or led an activity, the children were just drawn to watching them. And there was just such a lovely sense of our young people kind of growing a couple of inches taller whenever they did that, because they could sense that the children were watching them and learning from them, and that helped the young people to kind of grow into being leaders and grow perhaps in their faith as well, as they felt that, oh yeah, and other people are looking up to me, and I'm kind of delivering something that's important.
Fantastic, fantastic. And would it be an approach that, with the sense making in particular, would that be something that you would recommend going forward, even now the Deepening Discipleship project itself is finished? Would it be something that in an ideal world you'd like to carry on with, or would you prefer just to focus on, your own Messy Church and be sort of on your own there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could twin up with another church, or it be in a trio of other churches with the same similar thing, with young leaders leading your Messy Church, I think it would really keep us on our toes and help us to keep reflecting, because already I can feel the impetus to make sure we're filling in our reflecting forms and things is sort of fading a bit, because you're not asking for them anymore. So I think it would really help to be able to discuss, well, we tried this and it didn't work, what about you? And to help each other to feedback. So yeah, I think it would be a good thing to continue.
Great. Anita, thank you, and please pass our thanks on to Helen as well, and especially the youngsters. Lovely group of teenagers there. And the frightening thing is, for me, they're all a year older already. I know we all are, but for teenagers, the change in them, I'm sure, since I met them all that time ago, will be massive. Things change so quickly for them, and they've had such a rough year. So do pass on our thanks and congratulations and love to them. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And for all of us, really interesting thought, isn't it? This sense making and how we can all work together on that, or how you perhaps as a diocese might want to pick up on this sense that it's a really useful thing and really helpful and affirming and encouraging to make sense of each other's messy churches and experiences and noticing of God. That I remember at the sense making myself, seeing people saying, oh, well, we didn't think this was very good. But then the group they were working with, the other team, would be saying, but it's amazing what you're doing. It's fantastic. And you mentioned the teenagers growing in stature. I saw that, of people thinking, oh, perhaps it was quite good after all. So, helping each other out. Be interesting to talk to Dan, perhaps, about how to take that insight forward. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anita. I'll pass back to Claire now. Thanks, Claire.
Well, I just want to finish by just saying thank you so much to all of those of you who took part in this research. It really couldn't have happened without you, and you made it such a pleasure and a privilege, and it just wouldn't have happened without you. So to all of those of you who are here today, to your families, to your teams, please pass on our heartfelt thanks to them as well. Next Wednesday, it will all go live and you can read everything in much more detail. Lucy, do you want to say anything about the resources that will be on the Messy Church website?
Just that we'll be putting everything up there. It'll all be available in one place. The actual report, which is great, A Voyage of Discovery, that Claire's waved at us already, and things like the basics course and any information that we've got, basically we've popped up on that site. The islands map will be there, and the script, and a little video showing you how to use it in the first instance, if that's what you want to use. So everything will be up there, reflection forms. We just want to take this on to its next iteration and make everything available to as many people as possible. Great. Dan, we'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Lucy. A lot to think about, a lot to process and reflect on, and we're going to div you into some breakout rooms in a minute, just to kind of, just to think and explore what you've heard this morning. What jumped out for you? Was there something specific that's kind of stuck in your brain that you'd like to just process a little bit more? And then think about how might this influence your messy church as we go back to some new normal, being able to meet in the building again. But I've just asked Lucy just to show that illustration video just quickly before we break out, because the one thing that jumped out to me was the statement in it. It says, decide to be disciples and then make disciples. Not that I'm steering that you should all discuss that, but that was something that jumped out to me, and there's a lot in that little video. So Lucy, can you just play that, and then we'll bung people in breakout rooms for 15 minutes.
Sorry, Dan, can you hear it?
Yeah, I heard it, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'll shut up and...
How do you make disciples in messy church? We took a team of researchers, the National Messy Church team, 24 local messy churches, and set off together in 2019 with generous amounts of prayer, guided conversation, reflective practice, laughter, hard work, and cake. Then journeyed together through a global pandemic. The Messy Churches piloted 6 different approaches to making disciples. 3 approaches involved working with the families. 3 involved working with the team. New all-age materials were developed, and new insights came from each approach. We were talking about God, and it made it feel as if God was listening to us. Rather than craft with a bit of Jesus, it's become more about Jesus with a bit of craft. I've learnt that it's much harder to talk about the Bible than I thought it would be, but it was really cool tonight. What are some of the headlines? If you want to make disciples in messy church, it's about some very simple decisions. Decide to be a community of reflective practice. Make space for reflection in every aspect of messy church. Decide to value quality, not just quantity. Value the significance of the small and the single. Decide to journey together. We found there's something profound and effective about togetherness. More than anything, decide to be disciples and to make disciples, because we're church. That simple act of deciding to be on a lifelong journey with others to follow Jesus is the one action that will lead to greater depth. Oh, and cake. Eat lots of cake.
Cool. I'm hoping now that people have got an invite into a breakout room. So click on the link and hopefully I'm hoping it's just us three left.
Dan, did you tell them how long they've all got in breakout rooms?
I'm just about to. I've given them
Brilliant.
about 30 minutes.
Yay! Well, that worked okay timing-wise. How did it come across?
Your bits were great.
Find out.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to pause record?
Oh, sorry. Trying to get gallery view back. There we go. Ah.
And we're recording this, aren't we? Still.
Yeah. Shall I put it on pause for the moment?
Back in the room.
Can I ask, are we going to get a summary of the Q&A? Is that possible? Because I might be more to our original timetable than the slightly amended one. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But that'd be fab.
I will try and save the chat if I remember.
Done.
Oh, right.
Actually, just while people are coming back, you could make a start. If you wanted to stick any questions,
yeah, do so.
Insights into the chat, that will be really
Sensible
helpful.
one, please.
Damn, is that censorship?
45 seconds left. As in. I've just seen this message. No wonder you look like a cat in the caught in the headlights when I went video, and you're like.
Can I just ask while we're waiting, what was the age range for your young leaders group on the discipleship course?
Secondary, generally, secondary school age.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Mark. There's very research around timing, and yes, it does depend on context. I think the closest we've got to any research about timing would be in Playfully Serious and all the questions that Claire was asking then, finding out when people do their messy churches. Apart from that, anecdotally, it's the only thing that I've observed is that the messy churches that meet on a Sunday morning, as opposed to the afternoon, can be, and it's not exclusively, but they can be more orientated towards the needs of the Sunday congregation rather than people who don't set foot in church apart from messy church.
Thank you.
But Claire, I don't know if you want to comment on any timing generalities.
No, nothing to add.
Thank you. For us, I think we used to be on a Saturday morning, but lockdown, other activities are back up and running before us. So we'd aged through from our late teens had gone through into Youth Alpha and confirmation. So we were left with a preschool group. That preschool group have now grown up and joined gymnastics, dance classes and everything else on the Saturday morning. So I think we're going to take the opportunity and push for Sunday afternoon, because the existing church, you say, when is Messy Church coming to church? You know, we've all got them. I say, it is church. Look, it's even on a Sunday. So that'll tick that box. but will be after the sport comes home and before tea, I think, is our approach.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've done it. I'm sure you've done it. It's always worth asking the families themselves and just touching base with a few of the very active ones and just saying, in an ideal world, when would it be? Yeah. And don't, I know you don't need telling, Mark, but don't.
I might.
Just don't bother about the people saying, when are they coming to church?
Oh,
We
no.
all get it, and they just need ignoring. Or just saying,
really?
they are coming for 2 hours to church. They are spending an hour immersed in biblical activities. They are worshipping. They are having fellowship. They are breaking bread together. Do you want
Lucy, I did
blood?
need telling, because that's exactly what I would say. I wouldn't ignore it at all.
Don't let that govern what you do.
Thank you.
A helpful answer to your question, Mark, from Lydia in Cardiff, what happens in her context, so do read that.
Thanks, Lydia. Yeah. And Angela, is it possible to connect with other Messy churches via the website? Anyone who's registered with us on the directory, they put some sort of contact on there, usually an email, a phone number. So yes, you can connect them that way. Or Dan has a handle, probably more than most dioceses. Bristol has a handle on the Messy churches that are happening in your diocese. So you can always go through him and he can put you in touch with particular ones, I'm sure. But yeah, on the directory. So I can't remember the tab, but it's fairly easy to find on the Messy Church directory. Oh, and if you do a Messy Church and it's on the directory, do just, before you start up again, do just refresh your details and make sure that all those details are up to date. That'd be really helpful.
Thank you.
Just quickly, just while there's a pause, if there's anything that you want to follow up from this morning, maybe you've just got lots of ideas buzzing around your head and you would appreciate someone to talk to help process this, then of course I'm available. I'm sure Lucy would love to help too, but she's got a slightly bigger remit than myself. And obviously Messy Church is something that we're promoting as a diocese. So please do get in contact with me. And I'd love to help and support you explore obviously what this research might look like in your context. Another thing that obviously we've learned over the last year is that it's very, very easy to meet virtually. One thing that I'm looking to do, and again, I suppose it picks up on that question of connecting with other Messy churches. I'd certainly like to, in the foreseeable future, kind of do like a regular bi-monthly or termly meetup. And again, it's a place for those involved in Messy Church, whether volunteer, leader, coordinator, we can just gather and discuss and pray about what's going on in your context. You can have a chat with other people, because sometimes it's a valuable resource hearing what other Messy churches are doing. We can learn and grow from each other's experiences. So that's something that I will be looking to do in the future. And again, the advantages of doing like this is you don't have to drive anywhere. You can quickly nip in and out if and when you want to, and it just makes it more accessible. So that's something that I'll be looking to do probably in the autumn, when hopefully we can all start meeting in the building again. Right, the recording of this Zoom, it will be connected with the launch of the research next week. So we will be putting something on our own Dyson website. There'll be a link in there, but I will also be emailing. I do a monthly emailing list, which I think most of you are part of, or if you're not, if you would like to be a part of my mailing list, then just email me. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll just send out monthly details of resources, training, and other ideas and stuff that's available to help youth and children's and families ministry. And also in that email, it'll be asking to forward on the Messy Church link to those that were here today. So yeah, it will be on a Dyson website. So I'll put my email in.
Just picking
Lucy's
up on
got a link
oh, sorry,
there.
Dan.
Want to explain that, what you've just put there, Lucy?
I was just responding to Jill's excellent comment that a lot of us would resonate with losing contact. So discipleship is great, but let's do one thing at a time. Let's actually make contact with people again. Absolutely. There is a lot of advice around. I put in the link to the support teams. So if you wanted to chat to somebody about that particular question, then you could do that in greater depth than we have time for now through that link. Have a look on the website. I should search for something like publicity, because sometimes it's a case of just looking again, looking afresh with a new start about how are we letting people know that this messy church is happening. So have we got a big banner to stick out on the roadside? How's our Facebook page looking? Does it look like a graveyard, or with nothing on over the last 5 years, or is it fresh and new and bubbly? Is it on the church website? Have we got people gossiping about it in the school playground? Has everyone got a little postcard that they could give out, that they just carry around in their handbag or pocket in case they meet somebody? Are there places to advertise in local shops? Who are the people of peace who need telling and getting on side, who would share it with an entire community? So it's stuff like that. But the Purple team could help chat through that. It's also the sort of thing that they, if you go along to a messy meetup online and say, the problem I've got is I don't have contact with any of my families, what do I do? And the people on the screen, it's usually a small group, they'll sit and chew it over very sympathetically and come up with really good answers. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Jill, probably the vast majority of messy churches are in that similar predicament. And it's worth noting that obviously we focused on the two areas in the research that Bristol Diocese was involved in, the messy basics and the young leaders, but obviously 2 other dioceses explored 4 other avenues. And one of them was about messy meetups and kind of social action projects. And again, think it might be worth looking at the research for those, and that might give you some ideas and inspiration of how to sort of create an event or put on an event that helps you reconnect, not just with the existing families that came to Messy Church, but possibly new families as well. This is a really exciting opportunity to look afresh at your Messy Churches. This isn't that putting a burden or extra stress and work on you, but to kind of go, okay, this is a great opportunity, and how can we re-engage again with our Messy Church families in person once again, and really love, serve them and welcome into God's kingdom. I'm conscious of time. Do you want to put anything on the end of there, Lucy, before we
just to say that actually what we're saying in general is it's been a really tough year, and I would just want to encourage people not to feel the urgency to rush back into meeting face to face sooner than you're ready to. And things like the deepening discipleship research, when that comes out, that could be a really good way of using the next few months of not charging straight back into Messy Church as you've always done it, but just to take the findings and talk about them with your team and refocus on why you're doing Messy Church, what families need now after a global pandemic. And it'll be a wonderful resource for just talking about how you can serve your families even better. So use the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Would you like to just close in prayer, and then people can get on with the rest of their days?
Wonderful. Loving God, thank you. Thank you for your people and all these wonderful, gifted, dedicated people that are part of your church. We do ask that you will bless every single one, and that you will help each one of us to see how you want us to be church in this new start, this new launch, this reboot of getting back together. Help us to go with you, Lord, and not with any external pressures, but just to be in tune with your spirit and your love and joy and just hope for the people that you love so much. Help us to serve them as your hands and feet. And thank you, Lord, for Dan and for his making this all happen today. Please help us to work together, to stay connected, and to benefit from all the wisdom that you're drawing out of and into this network. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
I just feel that I'm going to share the Great Commission with you at the end of Matthew 28 to close our time. But thank you very much for giving up your time to be here. I hope it's been useful. And again, thank you, Claire and Lucy, for your input. So then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And then Jesus came to them and said, "Authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything. And I've commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Amen. God bless you all and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
There we go. Thank you very much, you both.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Thank you,
That's all right.
Claire. Awesome.
And if you could send me the